Just under 2,000 terrorists, murderers, rapists, and October 7th monsters are now walking free. Some in Israel, some abroad, and not because they escaped, but because we, Israel, released them. Why? To bring our hostages home. And yes, thank God they are finally home. We have waited for this for so long. They're alive and breathing and with their families. But so are the people who have destroyed thousands of lives. And because we are willing to release murderers in exchange for our IDF soldiers and hostages, we constantly send a clear message to Hamas, one of weakness, which is one of the reasons they're not rushing to return the deceased hostages. 16 are still in captivity, 16 families still suffering, and 16 potential future terror releases for terror organizations everywhere. How is this still considered normal policy in Israel? At what point do we just say enough? This can't keep happening. There has to be a line that we don't cross again. And for me, that line is getting really, really simple. We need to change the way we deal with terrorism, especially terrorism and terrorists who partook in October 7th, like the Nukhba terrorists. And whilst the debate about this was on hold so that the alive hostages weren't potentially impacted by moving anything forward, now our excuses are kind of done. And apparently, Itamar Gvir agrees with me, which doesn't happen often. This week, he gave Netanyahu an ultimatum. Pass the death penalty law for terrorists, or I'm bringing down the government. So, does Israel need a death penalty? Let's just say my answer starts with a big fat why. This is a Meira K show on JNS TV. Let's talk about it. Before we get to the logical breakdown of what this means and the technical know-hows, let's first remind ourselves who we are talking about. And I'm smiling as a defense mechanism. The media would have you believe that these are fathers and friends illegally detained in Israel with no due charge. Baloney, by the way. Some even go as far as to call them hostages. But we know the reality of who these people really are. Here's a few names. Imad Kawasame, 52 years old, a Hamas terrorist, convicted for a 2004 Beersheba bus bombing that killed 16 Israelis. Qasem Aref Khalil, 36 years old, a Hamas operative. He was involved in the stabbing murder in 2019 of a Yeshuda student called Gvir Sorek. Mohammed Arif Samhan, he's 55. But he's from Fatah, not Hamas. He's responsible for the 2003 Jerusalem bus bombing that killed 23 Israelis. Fatah, FYI, is the military arm of the Palestinian Authority. You know, the group that wants to rule Gaza when Hamas is gone. Those three names are three people out of the 250 security prisoners that we released last week. But have no fear. We didn't release only 250, God forbid. We also released 1,700 more Gazans that were detained during the war. Yeah? You guys clocking? Those were just three names. Out of 250 prisoners, 15 will be released to East Jerusalem. That's right where I live. 100 are going to be released to Judea and Samaria. Maybe some of you live there. And 135 who are convicted of murder and weapon offenses are set for deportation to Gaza or elsewhere. Previously, I said that anyone released is not coming into Israel. Now that's being proven to not be true. The 1,700 Gazans that were detained during the war after October 7th, they'll either be freed to the Strip or exiled abroad. How does that make you feel? Don't get me started on the other thousands that we released in the first two hostage releases in this war. 3 friends of mine who had family members murdered now know those murderers are literally roaming the streets. We could just do 2 honorable mentions from previous releases. Khalil Jabran, who murdered Ari Fuld in 2018. Mohammed Abu Warda, responsible for the 1996 Jerusalem bus bombing that killed 44 people. And he was also responsible for another attack in Ashkelon. He is now free. I will say this, and I want to just really emphasize this. Israel did hold its ground this time on not releasing the really big names that Hamas tried very hard to get back. Names like Marwan Barghouti, he's the leader of Fatah. Ahmad Sadat, he's the Secretary General for the PFLP. Okay, guess what? They believe pretty strongly in a one-state solution, but not the type that we like, and make Fatah look like a really gentleman-like organization. There's also Ibrahim Hamad, That's Hamas's West Bank commander, Judea and Samaria. He's serving 45 life terms for killings during the Second Intifada. Abbas al-Sayed, he orchestrated the 2002 Park hotel bombing, which killed 39 Israelis. And we have Hassan Salama. Okay, he's a Hamas operative. He's serving 48 life terms for multiple suicide bombings. Okay, so you're probably glad that they weren't released, as am I. But here's the thing. In the future, what's stopping that? They could be released. I just threw out names like really matter-of-factly, but 33 people killed in a bus bombing, that's 33 families destroyed. Partners, fathers, children's, friends. Multiple lives, multiple people who have gone through total devastation. And the perpetrator, the person behind that, still sits cushioned and comfortable. We don't talk about it and we don't go into the details and the pain. But think about how much we cared about every single one of those 20 hostages. Now multiply that exponentially by the amount of casualties that we have seen from terror in the last few years, not to even begin with the beginning of the state. How many thousands of Israelis have been sacrificed because of these terrorists? How many people have suffered so immensely? One terrorist sitting in a cell can kill 50 people, destroy 50 families. And we don't think about that enough. I don't on a personal level, that's for sure. And all of this, these terrorists still existing, these terrorists having made more than 100 million shekels combined, paid to them by the Palestinian Authority. These people now roaming the streets and planning the rebuilding of Hamas and other terrorist organizations could all not be our reality if we had the dignity to actually just say that it is time for the death penalty. You see, the quickest way to ensure a terrorist doesn't commit more terror is to unalive them for unaliving others. So when did this crazy idea of releasing murderers to the public start? Because it's just that. It's insane. Well, in 1955, we have our first known hostage exchange. Israel releases 41 Egyptian soldiers captured in fights in exchange for 4 Israeli soldiers. These weren't actual official terrorists per se, but it started this kind of principle of uneven swaps. In 1979, the PFLP kidnapped an Israeli soldier. His name was Avraham Amram, and most of us have no idea about him. He was kidnapped in Lebanon, and to get him back, Israel released 76 Palestinian prisoners. This marked Israel's first release of convicted terrorists in a deal with a Palestinian organization, another step up. In 1983, the PLF, the Palestinian Liberation Front, captured 3 Israeli soldiers, probably intentionally. In exchange, we released 1,150 prisoners, including hundreds of convicted terrorists. This was the main turning point. And whilst Begin, who was then the prime minister, approved this for good reasons, he did not foresee the future immense fallout. That now, every enemy knows kidnapping Israelis is the best thing you can do to gain publicity, create political pressure, tear the country apart, and free their terrorists, i.e. prisoners. From this point forward, abducting Israelis becomes a proven strategy and has now set the most insane precedent. You know what happens next? They kidnap the bodies of fallen IDF soldiers. You have Elchanan Tenenbaum, Gilad Shalit. And to get them back, Israel just keeps releasing insane amounts of terrorists. 1 Jew for 1,000 terrorists. And yes, it's as insane as it sounds, because what the critics of those deals back then said turned out to be totally prophetic, that these deals would inspire future kidnapping and empower terrorist leaders who would later return to violence. I need not say more. We all know when Sinwar was released and why they tried to capture hundreds of hostages on October 7th. The irony of all this is the reason we actually do it. And that's the life above all doctrine. It's something deeply cultural, even spiritual in Jewish tradition. The concept of pidyon shvuim, redeeming captives, is considered one of our greatest mitzvot. The idea runs really deep in our national psyche. Every life is of infinite value. One Israeli is not worth more than another 1,000, let's say, Arabs. It's simply beyond calculation the value of their life. That moral code became the backbone of Israel's military and national ethos. No soldier left behind. And I have to say, that's a very comforting idea. It's a moral ideal. However, it ends up meeting a really harsh political reality. Israel's a small country. Every kidnapped soldier becomes a national story, and the pressure to get them home is immense. I mean, you all saw the hostage protests. No one wants to become a soldier and think, maybe my country will leave me behind. Governments, even the most security minded, i.e., right wing, have found it nearly impossible to withstand that kind of pressure. It's not easy to say, but whether it was Menachem Begin in 1983, Ariel Sharon in 2004, or Benjamin Netanyahu in 2011, and now again, they all faced the same really impossible equation. Do we save one life now, or risk public collapse by saying no? In a democracy like Israel, where trust between soldiers and the state is seriously sacred, refusing a deal can feel like a betrayal of that social contract. But the price of it is immense. Groups like Hezbollah and Hamas have built entire strategies around this logic, knowing that Israel's compassion can be leveraged as a weapon. Dozens of Israelis have been murdered, and I think the number is probably higher than that, in attacks carried out by prisoners released in past swaps. Just October 7th is enough. It's a national paradox. The same humanity that drives Israel to fight for every captive also fuels the cycle that endangers future lives. It's an enormous debate here, but it would all be made so much simpler if we all knew that any successful terrorist wouldn't be alive in prison to be exchanged in the future. And that, my friends, is why we need to discuss the death penalty. I'll start by saying that the conversation about this has actually been on the table since before October 7th, but now it's specifically pertaining to terrorists known as the Nukhba terrorists, the one that partook in the massacre. There are hundreds of them currently awaiting trial, but every time the death sentence was brought up, it was quickly shut down of fear of what it could potentially do to the alive hostages. Gvir, the main voice behind it, claimed that actually it would show strength, something Hamas needs to see to give us back our hostages. But we won't ever know if that's true. Thankfully, the hostages are in our home with their families. But maybe we can test it now. You see, maybe he's correct regarding the next stages of the war. You know Hamas has zero intention of disarming, and as of this moment, they're playing games with the remainder of the hostages. Yes, it's the bodies, but they are still of utmost importance to us. This is in part due to the fact that they think that we are still soft, that they can get away with it. Peace through strength, this new big slogan that everyone's throwing around, it's not just a phrase anymore. And this might be a very, very strong indicator that they need, that the news is coming for them as well. If Israel can't even take out the Nukhba terrorists, the worst of the worst, then of course we're going to allow for Hamas to survive. And that's the logic that they're running on. That's exactly, FYI, why Gvir is now not just making public statements about this, about the death penalty, like he did at one of the funerals, but he's actually given Bibi an ultimatum. What is it? We end Hamas and legalize the death penalty, and if not, he is going to collapse the government. FYI, it's not actually as bad as it sounds. Elections are coming up here soon anyway, and there's a big chance that they could happen earlier with or without Gvir interrupting. But on how the elections happen in this country, we'll need to do another episode. Back to our topic. So where exactly does the bill stand, and what does it include? First of all, it's important to note that Israel does have a death penalty law. It's only been used once or twice, depending on who you ask, during the Eichmann trial, where Adolf Eichmann, one of the leading Nazi war criminals, was publicly hung in a very therapeutic moment for thousands of Jews. But for some reason, the law that's in place has never actually been applied against Arab terrorists. Take a second to think how different this country would have been if it had been. The new proposal was submitted by MK Limor Sivan under the initiative of, obviously, Minister Gvir, and was proposed already a few years ago. It was actually one of the campaign promises made to Gvir when the current 25th government was put together. Once Limor came into the government, she then went ahead with a practical proposal and brought it to the Knesset. So this has been going on for quite a while, way before October 7th. I think it's important to note that Limor's husband was murdered in a terror attack where she was seriously injured. And only a year and a half later, in the Gilad Shalit exchange, these terrorists were released back into the public. Surprise, surprise, one of them then became a leading commander in Rafah. And he was actually eliminated in the war, so that's good. But Gilad Shalit was released many, many, many years ago, and up until this point, that man has roamed free. It's not a surprise that Sivan wants to push this forward. The proposal is actually pretty simple. It's short, I read it myself. The law says that anyone who murders an Israeli citizen because they are Jewish and with a goal of harming Israel or the Jewish people, i.e., a terrorist, will face the death penalty and nothing else. No life sentence, the death penalty. It's not optional. If convicted for this crime, i.e., convicted for terrorism, the death penalty is mandatory. There will be no such thing as terrorists who don't get the death penalty. Right now, terrorists sometimes get actually lighter treatment. They might get better prison conditions, payments from the Palestinian Authority, as we said, hundreds of millions, and even early release in prisoner swaps. How convenient. This law is designed to stop that by making the punishment as severe as possible to deter future attacks. In areas under military jurisdiction like Judea and Samaria, the law allows a majority of judges in the military courts to impose the death penalty, and once it's finalized, the sentence cannot be reduced. Do you hear what I'm saying? Once it's finalized, there is no going back. You cannot reduce this sentence. And why do they need to make a special part about Judea and Samaria? Well, because we haven't recognized sovereignty there. They have a different legal system, and obviously so many terrorist attacks happen there. We needed to ensure that this sort of law actually applies to people everywhere. In short, this law is about making the consequences for terrorist murderers of Jews absolute and unavoidable, aiming to prevent terrorism and remove any chance of early release or lighter punishment. Kaput. Done. You're involved in terror. You're going to get the death sentence. The method of the death penalty is not expanded in the bill. It's relatively short. And for now, I think that's okay. We don't need to talk about the actual semantics. We just need to get it passed. You see, the bill has already passed its preliminary reading. There are 4 stages, and this is the first one. That already happened in March on 2022. There were 55 votes in favor and 9 against, and that tells you a lot about the sentiment of the country right now. But like all legislation, this law must pass through a multi-stage process, which will take a lot of time. In this case, it's widely kind of like acknowledged that the law could have already been completed, all 3 readings, and entered Israel's official book of laws, if not for ongoing political delays. Currently, certain members within the coalition and potentially the Likud party, although supportive in principle, i.e., they want to make their voters happy, are slowing the process. The reasons for this vary, but generally include concerns about international backlash. We will get to that in a second. Fear of how Hamas might react during wartime, not really relevant anymore, and other political considerations, behind the scenes stuff. Because the bill has passed a first discussion in the National Security Committee, as we said, the first of 4, it still requires the first reading in the Knesset, the second and third readings in this National Security Committee, and then the second and third readings in the Knesset. Complicated. In some cases, it's possible to estimate how long a bill will take to pass, but in this case, it's extremely difficult because the issue with it is actually just political. It's nothing to do with legal jargon. For the law to advance, all political actors must recognize its urgency and importance and push for it to pass. At the moment, we're not exactly there. That's the reason they've kept the bill so short. There's not a lot of technical details to negotiate and discuss. There's not much to change. It's just a very simple idea. Without the coalition majority, just FYI, the bill will not become law. So right now, we're moving into the Knesset's winter session. It's starting this week, and this is hopefully going to be one of the focal points for the upcoming debates. As we move into the final stages of the war, the question is looming on everyone. How are we going to deal with the Nukhba terrorists? As a Jew, I think the idea of our country executing people makes me kind of uncomfortable. I'll be honest, I was not always for it. But if October 7th has taught us anything, specifically me, it's that he who is kind to the wicked ends up being wicked to the kind. That's a proverb. Not having a death penalty leads to future terror. Period. And so I changed my mind. I think this should be absolutely mandatory. And whilst I know the world will freak out and say it's not right, etc., and that we're going to overstep our boundaries, and I have many things to say on that. First off, I literally don't care what the world says anymore. My friend's dad, murderer, is roaming Judea and Samaria, and she needs to drive there every day. They can literally go stick it. But on a more rational note, the justifications for this literally outweigh the potential fallout. First off, many countries have a death penalty and use it. The USA had 25 executions this year, and Saudi Arabia have had at least 345. It's less common in Europe, but still exists in Belarus, for example. People have the death sentence. Countries have it. It's not a crazy thing that Israel's inventing. Second of all, It literally doesn't matter what we do. The anti-Semitism and double standard held to Israel will continue regardless of this law. If they're going to hate us more, let us at least be safer. That's a fair price to pay. Third, no democracy suffers from terror the way that we do. It's unprecedented. And when you're unprecedented times, you often become a trailblazer. And that can lead to pushback. We just need to take that with a grain of salt and understand that that's part of us navigating this insanity that we are living in first, before Western societies. There is literally, in my opinion, never going to be a more justified crime for the death penalty than October 7th. These people do not deserve to still be alive, and most definitely do not deserve cushy terms and payments. Don't worry, Israel is still working on that. But the fact that that's going on is insane. The deterrence from this law would be enormous. And don't let anybody undersell that. The justifications for it are, I think, at this point pretty clear, but let's quickly review them. Number one, simple justice. A terrorist who is willing to give up his life to murder us and harm our country deserves to pay that price, the price he was willing to pay to begin with. Yes, we know in theory that every terrorist is aware that they might get killed, but there's a very high chance they won't. Not only will they survive, they will also gain social status in their community and financial stability. Knowing that they will actually definitely die is a deterrent for those who may be more moderate or pushed into it. People don't want to die. Yes, some of them are nuts, but this definitely lowers the incentive for it drastically. And third, recurrence. Dead terrorists can't commit more terror, which often becomes their priority once incarcerated. Just think how different our world would have been if Sinwar was removed and he didn't exist. Think how different everything would have been if this law was in place. The obstacles to this happen are many. We know that. We have a court here who blocks every move and politicians who put their own agendas above the lives of the people. We know that. And although many in the public support this, more than you would believe, it's not so simple that it will actually happen. But at least the conversation regarding it is happening. It's being normalized. Ben Gvir is actually putting an ultimatum on the table for this, and it's not being seen as a radical move. We want shifts for our security, protections against this never happening again. Like, that's what this means. That's why you've been through this war for the last 2 years. And that doesn't happen just with us trying to eliminate our enemies in Gaza. It starts with us changing how we do things, learning from our mistakes, and making sure this whole thing really does become never again. I know maybe I sound fanatic and extreme, but I think the rationale of this is so logical. We have people out there who have made it their life mission to eliminate us and destroy us in the most barbaric way possible. And they did it to us. And at this point, we need to have the dignity to be able to say, yep, there's a line that a person crosses that means you just can't come back from it. Other countries do it all of the time, and yet Israel is still pandering to the hope that if we're just seen as the most humanitarian nation, people will like us. They're not going to like us. That's not what's going on. And the price we are paying for people not liking us anyway is literally the lives of our children, of our friends, of our families. It just can't be in existence. And this needs to stop. It just needs to stop. And to me, I think the death penalty for real terrorism is one of the best solutions to this problem. I'm Meira, and I'll see you next time.